So once upon a time in Quebec, not in Quebec, I'm sorry, in Canada, uh, it had turned into an absolute Orwellian dystopian nightmare under COVID, as did the rest of the world. Restaurants shut down, uh, businesses shut down, social distancing, mask mandates. And then as time progressed and in addition to becoming a dystopian nightmare, we became an inhumane society. We then imposed vaccine passports. So when things opened up, because science being what it is and moving at the speed of science, which somehow meant defying it and shitting on our constitution, we imposed vaccine passports in certain provinces to get into certain businesses, restaurants, movie theaters, nightclubs. And there was a nightclub in British Columbia that apparently stayed open when they shouldn't have stayed open and didn't. Can you imagine this? They don't care about Granny. They wanted Granny to die. They didn't ask for people's vaccine passports before coming in. And they got a bunch of tickets. Some of the patrons or the owners got tickets. A bunch of tickets were issued, big tickets, and they contested it. I happen to know the lawyer involved in this case. There might be other lawyers involved, but I know the lawyer involved in this. Very, very good, smart lawyer. Nice person also. All of the tickets got dismissed. Now you're going to say this is good news. And I'm like, oh, this is good news. One way or the other, it's good news. But there's a little intersectionality of politics that's coming into play here, and we're going to see why in a second. I said, finally, we got a judge who understands that the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. People don't understand. It's not because you have a picture of something that it proves, A, that you even have a picture of that something, as we've seen in the Rittenhouse. Like, how do we know the picture wasn't modified? But it's not because you have a picture of someone in a club that you can then say, here's evidence that this person was in a club when there was a shutdown order, when there was a vaccine mandate. Because there's things you have to prove beyond the picture. Who took the picture? When did they take the picture? Show the metadata on the picture so that we can know that it hadn't been altered, so that we can know that the date of the picture is the date that the person who alleges to have taken the picture took the picture. It's just like we've all forgotten about the rules of evidence. And judges say, yep, I believe the science. They came in and said this was their opinion and didn't back it up with anything. I trust them. Well, this judge just dismantled everything and basically dismissed all but 2 of the tickets. And I think the only other 2 tickets that are outstanding and they've pleaded guilty to, so they'll contest them at a later date. Judge tears apart health authorities' case, claiming nightclub flouted COVID-19 restrictions. Prince George, British Columbia. Fun fact about Prince George, actually. Google. Fun fact about Prince George. I think it has the highest crime rate. Prince George, Canada. Highest crime rate. I think it has the highest crime rate in Canada. Drawing on 2020 crime statistics, yada, yada, yada. Prince George's crime rate was 209 Criminal Code of Canada offenses per 100,000. Wow. Yeah, Prince George, and it's not because it's like gang territory, you can't walk the street. It's a small town, small place. But Prince George, I remember because I drove through it one time with my wife and had no idea, but that was like 20 years ago. Okay. Prince George, British Columbia nightclub allegedly posted videos of patrons ignoring rules on social media. The horror. The first hint the Crown might have trouble winning its case against the nightclub accused of posting videos on social media of patrons flouting COVID-19 restrictions came when the judge overseeing the proceedings asked what Facebook was. Things went downhill from there. I happen to think, having read this now, the judge knew a little more than the judge was pretending to know. I haven't looked up the age of the judge. Brent Adair, we're going to see this afterwards. Over the course of an hour and a half last month, Judicial Justice Brent Adair shredded Northern Health's prosecution of Lambda Cabaret, rejecting public complaints as hearsay, questioning the relevance of video, showing a lineup of unmasked people, and asking how he could be sure someone hadn't hacked the Facebook account of the nightclub in Prince George, BC. Does anybody reading this, do you get the impression the CBC is supporting the judge's findings or casting doubt on the judge's capabilities? My impression reading this is that the CBC is casting doubts on the judge's capabilities. Seems to me that they're saying, you got an old judge who doesn't know what Facebook is, and you can just imagine how this judge is going to appreciate the evidence. Now, this judge is a judicial quack, whatever the equivalent is. This judge is a judicial quack. That's my impression. Maybe I'm wrong. There are so many holes in this case. It's like someone shot a shotgun. Okay, yeah. Multiple shotguns. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Lambda Cabaret, now known as Club 1177, identified itself as a, quote, safe space for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, and two-spirit community in northern BC. The two-spirit is the native bisexual, as far as I understand it. So now things get interesting, because whereas I said before, you finally get a judge who says to the government, F you, prove your bloody tickets and prove your science. Well, here you might have a situation where the judge says, I'm sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. If I uphold these tickets, I might get accused of some form of bigotry. So do I want to look like I'm taking a pro-government stance and anti-LGBTQ2A+ stance? Or do I, disregard these tickets, but in other circumstances, we'll find a way to maintain the tickets, like if it's Pat King, for example. So that it's an interesting thing. I dare say politics probably found a way of influencing or pressuring a judge to say, look, I don't want to be accused of bigotry. If I uphold these tickets, I might get a social media mob chasing me down, saying that it was some form of discrimination. How can I penalize people for finding a safe space during COVID? Business made headline last winter after Northern Health issued a series of Public Health Act violations, tickets, failing to make masks, failing to check patrons for vaccination status, and ultimately refusing to shut down in the face of a closure order. The case appeared to be a slam dunk. Not just the smoking, this is CBC quality journalism right here, not just a smoking gun, but the social media equivalent of someone firing the weapon, giving their name and address, and then explaining why they did it repeatedly. Except no, by the way, CBC morons. Not because there's a video on a website that says something that serves as proof beyond a reasonable doubt that it is what it says it is. Videos can come from a lot of different dates. To get a video and evidence, you got to have the person who took the video. In a lot of these cases, judges are taking judicial knowledge of stuff that they have absolutely no business of taking judicial knowledge of. They're taking judicial knowledge of that for which they have no reason to take judicial knowledge. Cabaret posted videos on Facebook of large groups of unmasked people dancing and drinking, and put up a sign they weren't following BC's vaccine policy. Open with 0 mandates 2 weekends in a row, one post declared. The media is the virus. I got to tell you something. I like this place. I like their philosophy. I like your ideas. I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter, if I may. The CBC has now obtained audio of the hearing, which took place in a courtroom, yada, yada, yada. Environmental Health Officer David Creighton, who is not a lawyer, acted as the Crown, and his only witness was another environmental health officer named Joey Chang. Well, that's good. So if the only other witness is that, how do you get the photos and evidence? How do you get the videos and evidence? How do you set things up in a time frame? How do you prove that beyond a reasonable doubt? They had hoped to try 8 tickets, yada, yada, yada. Adair dismissed the first ticket after saying the evidence Creighton introduced didn't come anywhere close to proving beyond a reasonable doubt that this particular bar was open. A video, hey, it's January 1st. It doesn't prove that it's January 1st. Get the person who shot the video, get the metadata of the video, and it goes on. But basically, the judge picked apart the evidence the way a judge is supposed to pick apart the evidence, the way so many other judges did not pick apart the evidence. The way in so many other cases, judges took judicial knowledge of things which were not only not things that a judge should be taking judicial knowledge of, were arguably even true in the first place. We observed people lining up, and we believe they were opening, Shank said. I also observed the order was removed from where I posted it. With a sigh, Adair dismissed that charge too. I'm told the order was removed. I have no idea who removed the order. No offense to anybody, but sometimes things posted outside pubs get ripped off by all sorts of people. Defense lawyer Saron Gabriselassie is seen in Toronto in 2020. This is the lawyer for the accused. Creighton entered a stay of proceedings on the next 2 tickets after the defense lawyer, Sarin Gabriselassie, entered a plea of not guilty to both. Okay. She said the Crown didn't even show up to contest 2 more tickets the following day. Hey, this is how, by the way, not to go back to Stu Peters and Pat King, this is a defeated ticket. Bona fide. You just have to find a judge who's going to say, yeah, I'm going to uphold the standard rules of evidence in these cases and not just defer to the authority of the government. And I do wonder if in this case it happened because of a little extra politics. Gabriselassie told the CBC she was prepared to make extensive arguments challenging the tickets on human rights grounds, but she never got the chance. But it's the last part that I actually like a lot. Gabriselassie said the decision should give heart to anyone planning to challenge a ticket. There's heavy reliance on the guilty plea regime, just hoping that Canadians will want it to go away. I am really encouraging Canadians not to plead guilty if they believe they're not guilty. Contest it right, cross your fingers, get a judge who's going to actually uphold the law, uphold the rules of evidence, and maybe you'll get lucky. Or, maybe you'll find a judge who says it's judicial knowledge that children need to get vaccinated if they want to stay with their parents, and by refusing to do that, the child should be taken from their parents. I'm exaggerating, but really not by much in some of the cases that we've looked at. So that's the good news coming out of Canada.